Welcome to Snapshots from the Cuban Diaspora An Odyssey in Images, a joint production of Firehouse Projects, the Conservatory, and Cranberry Coast Concerts. This program is supported in part by the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs and viewers like you, with your hosts, Lilia Fontana, Kirk Whipple, and Marilyn Morales. This program honors the generation of refugees fleeing Cuba at the onset of the Castro Revolution and the families that came after. This series of presentations seeks to shed light upon the journey of refugees from their homeland into their adopted country. Marisela Verena is a Cuban singer, songwriter, and performer, composer of Latin pop music, pop rock, folk music, and ballads. She is recognized for the poetry of her lyrics and her epic and witty songs. Marisela began her career in the early 1970s. She left Cuba for the United States at the age of 11. And she came through Peter Pan or Pedro Pan, along with thousands of other unaccompanied children. And I would like to welcome Marisela Verena. Welcome. Thank you for being here, Marisela. I'd like to ask you about your experience as a Pedro Pan kid, how it was for you and leaving Cuba at such a young age.
Okay, Lily, thank you. First, let me thank you for inviting me to thinking that my experience or my story is interesting and worth your time and your project. I want to thank you for letting me part of it. Let's talk about my experience in Pedro Pan, which I hope that it wasn't the worst. I know some people that really went through horrible times. It wasn't easy. It made us grow. It made us be mature, maybe be mature before time, like premature, mature.
It made you grow up faster.
Yes, sometimes I have written somewhere, I don't know, that the day I left Cuba, I became an adult somehow. I didn't realize it, and people didn't treat me as an adult, but I became an adult. I grew up very fast in those hours that I left my family.
Yeah.
This is this is something that's really heartbreaking. We were picked up at the airport by a stranger. They would do some kind of paperwork, and they would put us all in a bus or a van, and they would take us to Florida City, which was a place in Homestead that was already set up by the Catholic Church, where they had like different apartments. They were like townhomes. It still exists, and it's there. I think now it has unaccompanied kids, Mexicans and Latin Americans. But this place, which wasn't huge, but it was like let's say like a neighborhood with chain link fences and a road in the middle, and they had houses on this side and houses on this side. They had a community dining room where we would go to have breakfast and dinner, lunch and dinner, and everybody would go from those houses. Those houses had kitchens, but they didn't cook in those kitchens. We would go eat at a mess hall, let's say, and we were treated well. We had like what was called foster parents, which were Cuban couples that I guess needed the work or whatever, and they were hired by the Catholic Church to be symbolic parents for us in those apartments that they were like townhomes. They had rooms upstairs, and downstairs, if we were very crowded, they would have bunk beds, and we would sleep whenever we could, wherever we could. These were like father figures, parent figures for us. But our stay there was totally dependent on when the Catholic Church would place us with other foster parents in different states or schools. In my case, I was sent to a Catholic school with nuns. In this place in Florida City, they had a church. They would have an everyday mass if you wanted to go, and they had a little infirmary. It was like boot camp. We were in camp, and they would take care of us, and they would feed us, and we had parent figures. But then, of course, and then we would get $1 a week in change. They gave us $1 I remember it was dimes, and we could buy a Coke. They had a Coke machine. We could buy Cokes. Or they had a little shop, very small little shop where you could buy stamps to write your parents. We could buy envelopes. We could buy maybe gum, whatever they sold there. Yeah.
Marisela, what was going through your head as an 11-year-old in that place? I mean, I can imagine, but I can't really. I fortunately was not a Pedro Pan,
Mm-hmm.
but I wonder, because my cousins were all Pedro Pans on both sides. So what was going through your head?
What was going through their heads, your cousins?
I haven't asked that question, which is interesting. I should.
Oh, so it comes down to me. Okay. Well, we were 3 siblings. I was the youngest. My sister left first. We were all sent alone. First my sister, and then months later my brother, and then months later me. You would say, why? Because I guess my parents were waiting for things to change in Cuba, for things to get better. My father was always, he died here in Miami, and he died with a hope and with a dream that was not going to last. And it lasted, and he died in 1972, and we're talking 1962.
Yeah.
So I guess they were trying to see if things got better, if something happened. So that's why they waited. First, my sister wanted to leave. My sister wanted to leave. She was already studying to be a teacher in what was called in Cuba Normal de Maestros. So she was pretty advanced, and she was like maybe 16, maybe she was already 17, I'm not sure. And she hated what was going on in her world, and the pressure and the vulgarity, and all of a sudden everybody was had a permission to be despondent and in your face with the revolution and all that, and she couldn't stand it. She said, I want to leave Cuba, because she already had heard about the flights, about the Catholic Church receiving us. I was too young. I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I did, but I didn't, When then it came the turn. It was my brother's turn, which was months later, and my brother the same. He was picked up at the airport, and then he was taken to a camp for boys, which was called Matecumbe, and it depended on your age. I mean, I think in where I was, boys could be there until they were 12, and then after that they had to go to the boys' camp. And me, when I was told that I had to leave, I said, good, I don't have to do piano lessons anymore. Because
You're speaking to pianists here.
I couldn't stand having piano lessons, and I always loved music, and my whole family loved music. But I hated the piano, discipline and all that. So this was my first thought. I don't have to do any more piano lessons. I mean, you can tell how young I was. I didn't know I didn't realize the drama of it. So I did see my mother crying a lot in the airport because they didn't let my father say goodbye. And I said to her through the glass, I said, "Don't worry, everything's going to be fine." And we were separated like 2 years. The thing is that when I got to Florida City, I was instructed by my family that whenever I had an interview with a social worker, which you did day after you got there, I was told you have to say that you want to go to where your sister is. When I got to Florida City, my sister had already been sent out. So I didn't have any family. My sister was sent out with 9 other Cuban girls, and they were sent to the same place in a very small town called Clinton. Clinton, like the president. Clinton, Iowa. It's borderline with Illinois. And but at least, there were 10 Cuban girls that went together. And when I got to Florida City, my sister had already left. So what I said to the social worker, I want to go where my sister is. Because they said, "Do you have any family?" Yeah, my sister was sent to this academy. It was called Our Lady of Angels Academy in Iowa. And I want to go with her, of course. And so they wrote it down. And then a month later or something, I don't know, they would do updates with you. I had to go to the social worker again, and I would say I want to go with my sister. So, meantime, you would take some English lessons there. We had a school, always inside. And then you would get to, if you had any family in Miami, and they could pick you up for the weekend. Like maybe take you on Saturday and bring you back on Sunday. I did have an aunt. Everybody was so overwhelmed, and everybody was so economically tight that if they didn't take you, it's because they couldn't. Everybody had their own family, and so you would like go a weekend with your aunt, and you would see your cousins or whatever. See, and so one day, like 3 months later, I was told you already got transferred. You're going to be transferred, and you're leaving tomorrow, or you're leaving day after tomorrow. And so I said, great.
This is an extraordinary thing, and I like to point out, as one of the American representatives in Florida in the community, that
you're special, Kirk. You're un gringo aplatanado.
Bueno, si quiero comer en la casa de mi suegra, ya tú sabes. But I mean, this. I can't stress enough how, the majority, I think, of Americans don't understand how unprecedented the Pedro Pan flights were, sending thousands of children to a country they've never been to, all across the country. You said Iowa, Florida, New York. They were everywhere. And, I mean, nowadays we couldn't imagine the thought of sending a child to a foreign land, not knowing who they're going to be with, under what conditions. It's really it's extraordinary.
The thing about it is also that there were some kids were babies.
Yeah.
Sometimes they sent babies. Babies. I mean, I'm talking cuddling babies, and sometimes. I mean, they were the least, the least Pedro Panes, but they were babies, and they were very small, young, very small kids that would, as I said before, would be taken like under the supervision of their sister, who was maybe 7, and had to act like a mother, and we didn't speak English, which is a little, just a little hiccup there. We didn't speak English.
Back in Iowa at that time, not speaking English. Let's just drink that in.
Right. And sometimes you would go to, I mean, I was sent which I was hoping would be with my sister, who was with other Cuban girls, and she had been there already for months. I think she left in February, and I was sent like in September or October or something. But the fact that sometimes you were sent to a Cuban, a kid would be sent to a family. A family would accept to be a foster family for a kid, or a girl, or a boy, or whatever. Sometimes they were two, and they didn't speak the language. And they were sent to Wyoming, they were sent to Minnesota, and they were sent to California, or everywhere that a family or an academy, a school, would accept to be part of the Catholic welfare thing. It was called Catholic welfare. And this was something that I think what happened to them was that they never expected that this was going to be like this. Was in a year and a half. And they didn't expect 14,000 plus kids to all of a sudden, come like that. And they didn't have any logistics. There were kids that were sent to reform schools, reformatories. I know girls that were sent to reformatories, girls from great families who had to learn how to survive in that environment, which is a very cruel environment because kids have to defend themselves and they become very aggressive. And you know that kids are usually very abusive, many times one with each other. And in a reform school, a kid is very poor thing, hateful, or says, let's pick on this one. This one just got here,
Yeah, they were bullies and unruly kids.
Yeah, and I mean, like, hello, you didn't come to this world to be abused or abandoned, and you have to try to be compassionate with it. But when you are 11 or 12, you just go like that,
Yeah.
So I was told that I was, and then my story is just that I was told, okay, you're leaving tomorrow. We had just one little bag, and which was all that they let us bring from Cuba. And they picked me up and they took me to the airport, and they gave me a ticket. Didn't speak English. Gave me a ticket. I mean, we knew how to say mom, mother, father. Tom is a boy, Mary is a girl.
To people who weren't your mother or father.
Yeah, at least we knew genders. Tom is a boy. Now we would be in trouble. Okay, so anyway, I went to the airport. I took the plane. I was on the plane alone. I think I had become 12 already in the Florida city. And we landed in Chicago. And when we landed in Chicago, the plane started deplaning everybody, and I stood outside of the gate in Chicago, which was, I think, the second largest airport at that time of the United States. And I saw the pilot and the stewardess and everybody leave the plane, and nobody was there for me. So I said, okay. I just stood there. And I mean, just depends on the kid. Maybe it happened because I'm able to take it. Some kids would start crying, and maybe they would get help faster than me. But anyway, I saw this couple that had a teenager with them, and they were like with the papers, and they looked like they were lost. And I realized that I had seen them on the plane. I had seen them boarding on the plane. So I said, I don't know who they are, but I'm just going to approach them and say, hello, I don't know where I'm going. I'm left here, and can you help me? And of course, like, God never abandons you. So I had to do a transfer. How do you call that? I had to take another plane to get to Iowa, to get to Des Moines. And I mean, this was walking the whole airport to get to another gate. These people had to take that same plane, and they were lost, but they were adults. They didn't speak English, but they were taking their daughter to a college, some kind of school for her to learn English. And I guess, I mean, these are adults. So I said, I don't care where they're going. Maybe they're going to Abu Dhabi, but I'm going with them. I don't care. So they looked for help, and they got somebody from the airport. And the guy from the airport saw the documents, and I gave him my documents, and he walked us half an hour through the airport, and we went to another gate, and we got on the other plane. When I got to Des Moines, yeah, that's the airport. We got to Des Moines, and sure enough, there was a social worker waiting for me there. I mean, not in Chicago, but in Des Moines. And then I said to her, hello, and I said in my bad English, I'm going with my sister, and I said the name of the academy, Our Lady of Angels. She had a little kid with her daughter or something. She put me in the back of the car and just dropped me in a orphanage. No explanation. Those were her instructions. And I was dropped in an orphanage. My sister not anywhere to be found, because this was in Davenport and my sister was in Clinton. See, I mean, if you look at it from the distance, you can tell that there was an absolute
disconnect.
Right, because it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
I guess there was no logistic. And so somehow my sister learns that I'm there. In her school, the mother superior in her school tells her, do you know that your sister is in Davenport? And she says, what? And they tell her that, and they make a connection. They take me to the principal's office in the orphanage, and my sister is on the phone. And she says, what are you doing there? And I said, good question. I don't know. I never said that I wanted to come here. But she says, well, I was told there was a nun there that spoke Spanish because she had been in Mexico. And she told me that where my sister was, there was no grades for me, for my age. That was a high school. And my sister said, there's a kindergarten here. There's all ages here. And I said, well, that's not what they think. So they started doing the paperwork, I guess, whatever, to try to transfer me with my sister, whatever time that took. Meantime, I was being bullied by the kids in the orphanage, and it was not a happy time. But then you would write to your parents and you would say that you were okay. Because, I mean, hello, you know that you couldn't talk to them on the phone. It was like, then, and the connection, I mean, after that, even the connection with Cuba was even worse. At that point, that was maybe, 1962? When did they break relations? I think it was in October or something.
Or 60, or beginning of 63 or end of 62, maybe.
I think it was end of 62. So one letter would take like months if it got there. So anyway, meantime, my brother stays alone in Matecumbe, in the boys' place, feeling miserable. He was totally miserable. And then my sister they got somehow, and in a few months they took me to be with my sister. And I was transferred to that school. And the Cubans were all older. The Cuban girls were older, so they had another wing in that school, and all the dorms. But they were people that you could relate to, and also there were Mexicans, there were a couple of Mexicans and one girl from Panama, people whose parents had the money to send them to learn English, because this was a very fine Catholic school. So there, I learned English. I made good American friends. Everybody was very kind and nice. Always hated the nuns, but that had been coming from when I was in Cuba. I was also in a nuns school, but not hated. You know how it is.
They were fierce.
I'm sorry.
They were fierce.
Oh no, and American nuns are better than the Latin and Hispanic nuns. Oh my God. So anyway, at least they play sports and they skate. Cuban, you will never see a Cuban nun or a Spanish nun, because we had a lot of nuns from Spain in Cuba. You will never see them skate. So anyway, there we stayed until my parents were able to leave Cuba, which was like a year and a half later or something, or maybe two. And they left thanks to, I mean, there was no immigration at that point, except that these were parents that had their kids through their kids were in the United States because of the Pedro Pan program. So they had a chance to get a visa and live in a Red Cross boat. Mm. And so my parents were able to leave with whatever they had on. They didn't even have luggage in order to get here. And then months later, they were told, if you want to go to Chicago or go to California or whatever, you can go there, and you can still get help from the government so that your kids get together with you in Chicago or in Minnesota or whatever. My father said, no way. I'm not leaving Miami because maybe someday I can walk to Cuba. So, yeah. I mean, you know what? That's why they stayed here. They wanted to be close, and so they gave up the help that they were getting, whatever it was, and they were working in picking up tomatoes in Homestead and potatoes, and you know, everybody went through that at that point in 1962, 63. And then they took in two cousins of mine who were not very happy with the family that they were with, and they let them be with us. So finally we met, we were able to meet again. My brother was able to go to the same town that my sister and me were in, because an American family adopted, him as foster parents. So at least we were reunited. I know people that never saw their parents again, or saw their parents many years after. I mean, the first flights that were allowed from United States to Cuba was in 1979, I think.
Yes.
Right? So people were able to go see their grandma or their mother or whatever after 1979, or at least beginning 1980. And it was such an experience for Cubans, who probably many of them thought that we were very abused and sacrificed here and whatever. When they saw their families again, Mariel happened. First, the embassy, that people got in the embassy and people could not even stand in one inch. And then happened Mariel, because it became, just seeing the families again and their families talking to them made them realize, what are we doing here,
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's not a terrible story, I think.
No, but I have a question.
Okay.
How do you think that has influenced your music?
Let me interrupt here just a second, Lily, because this could be a 3-hour show. I'm serious.
Oh, yes.
And and it might be, but we wanted to share one
A
of,
segue to what we're going to share.
yes, one of
Okay.
Marisela's songs, and then let's come back afterwards and ask her about her
Well, she can
fabulous
tell us.
career.
Yes, absolutely.
And we found this video of one of her famous songs, and we're going to play that for you now. Nosotros los cubanos.
Oh, God.
Nosotros los cubanos no somos nada chauvinistas. Al ser tan superiores, solo somos realistas. El mundo se divide exactamente a la mitad. Nosotros los cubanos y el resto de la humanidad. No somos jactanciosos ni tampoco racistas, y no somos políticos y no somos cuentistas. Quizás es por si acaso o por necesidad. El Papa nos bautiza y nos bendice y ya. Nosotros los cubanos no vamos al infierno, pagamos en la tierra con pésimos gobiernos. Cuando vamos al cielo se acaba la quietud, y al mismo Jesucristo lo tratamos de tú. Nosotros los cubanos no somos mal hablados, no somos bulliciosos ni tampoco exagerados. No nos equivocamos, la culpa nunca es nuestra. El otro es responsable porque es un come mierda. Nosotros los cubanos no somos nada chauvinistas. Al ser tan superiores, solo somos realistas. El mundo se divide exactamente a la mitad. Nosotros los cubanos y el resto de la humanidad. En todos los asuntos queremos ser el centro. Nos hacemos los muertos para ver el entierro. El cubano es maestro, el cubano es experto, y aquel que no es cubano ya tiene un mal de nacimiento. Entre nuestras virtudes no se halla la humildad, pues eso es pedir mucho con tanta facultad. No hay un cubano humilde, pero si yo lo veo, propongo que se exhiba en un museo. Si el mundo se rigiera por nuestras directrices, todos seguramente serían más felices. Somos los más fecundos en lo de concebir, porque un hijo de puta nos puso a todos a parir. Somos pluscuamperfectos, somos protagonistas. Si nos dejan hablar, ya es nuestra la conquista. El cubano es rebelde, es individualista. Por eso nunca fuimos ni seremos comunistas. Por eso es que a unos cuantos les somos irritantes. Hay que pagar el precio porque somos tan brillantes. Pues somos luchadores y somos exitosos, y somos tan modestos que rabiamos de orgullosos. Nosotros los cubanos solo estamos de visita, pues lo que preferimos es vivir en nuestra islita. Y es que en cada cubano habita una verdad. Queremos ver a Cuba en libertad.
Que volar contigo, hacer que volar.
Que bururu arara, hacer que volar.
Que volar contigo, hacer que volar.
Donde tú vas a omitir, hacer donde
First applause. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the influences and all. Go ahead, Marisela. Let's hear it.
What? What do you want to hear?
I
already forgot the question because that song is so long. It's, yeah.
No, I wanted to know, you just gave us a synopsis of what was your experience. I was wondering how it influenced your music and if you can talk about all your successes throughout these decades.
I always think that success is what comes next. It's, I mean, already, whatever laurels you get, they're gone, they're done, and it's good. It's good because maybe sometimes I think that I wasn't on the wrong path. Or at least it's the path that has passion for me, and it's been difficult. It's been very difficult. Even the fact that we're Cubans makes it very difficult. Because although Cuban people are very much loved in the world for their music, and it has been always that way since the beginning of last century, but now it's been difficult because we are not we don't have a country. Not even the ones that live there have a country. So when you are an extranjero, when you are a foreigner, it's like, I always think of this, I have a picture in my head when ducks and geese are flying and they're traversing a territory because they are in, the time when is it that they leave on winter and they move to another place that is warmer. And when ducks are flying and geese are flying, the hunters are there with their guns, and they are targets for the hunters. When we have been flying through strange territories for 62 years, and it is not always welcoming because you don't belong in those countries, and actually we never belong. We are grateful, but we don't belong, and this is what I feel. I feel that we don't belong. We inhabit, and this I have that in one of my songs. We don't belong. We inhabit the place, and we try to honor the place with our talents or our labor, our work. And our kids are born in those places. And we tell those kids, you belong here and you should honor this place. But the fact that we had to leave, and it wasn't an immigration, it was exodus.
Yes.
And it wasn't an economic immigration because people had to shut down their businesses or had to just abandon their professions and start from scratch in a place with a different language, and I'm talking France or Germany or wherever, and even in Spanish-speaking countries, the customs are different, the idioms are different, the routines are different, and you have to get used to that. I have a friend that was I think I told you this. I have a friend he was an actor, and he was filming in a movie production in Spain, and they were in I think it was Saudi Arabia or some place in Marrakesh. It was a place of, everybody was, Muslim, and there was a desert, and this was a setting of the movie that he was taking part of. And then they had hired a whole bunch of camels and camel keepers because they needed it in the production. And he starts listening to this man's with the Arabic attire or whatever, with the thing on his head and the garments and all, and he kept saying, "Coño, levántate, Oye, levántate, coño. Levántate de ahí. Oye, levántate, carajo. And they started looking at these tunics and things with these words coming out of it. And they went over to him and says, do you speak Spanish? He says, yeah, I'm a Cuban. I stayed here. And I mean, I got here and the people that I was with left and I stayed because I don't want to go back to Cuba. So he became a camel keeper. And and this is true. This is not a joke. I mean, we are everywhere. We have done everything. And this makes us like colorful. But maybe that guy wanted to be in his hometown, you know, whatever he would have done or whatever he wanted to do. It is not easy living. I mean, even the immigrants that are looking for an economic opportunity have to suffer and leave their environment, but they do it willingly. We haven't done it willingly. I mean, in a sense, we have willingly left the dictatorship, but we didn't want to leave our mothers and our sisters and our people and our crafts, you know. So it kind of makes me think that we are never going to be satisfied, even though we get used to the countries that we live in, and we are grateful.
Let me say something too, because I wouldn't know of this experience if it wasn't for that horrible dictator and the regime who forced my lovely wife's family out of Cuba and gave me a chance to meet her. It's a real dichotomy. On the one hand, it was a horrible situation, but I and the rest of the world have benefited from knowing my wife and now you, Marisela, and your wonderful experience, which I would not have known about were it not for. So there's the paradox.
Yeah, well, nothing happens for nothing. I mean, your wife was meant for you, and you were meant for your wife, and you were meant for your wife no matter where you would have been. I mean, maybe you would have met her on a plane, or you would have met her on a touristic site. I mean,
she would have actually beaten me in Moscow at the Tchaikovsky competition.
I was about to say that, you know, because we met in a piano competition and I beat him there, you know. Well, I mean, had I not met him in Maine, in Portland, Maine, I would have met him in Russia.
Right. But did you notice that she said that she beat him?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Just take note of that. Okay. Now the thing is that I don't know if you know about the concept or the theory of 6 degrees of separation.
Yep.
Okay. So we are all connected, and nothing happens for nothing, and there is a reason for everything, and maybe you would have met her before, or maybe you would have gone to Cuba as a tourist and you have met her there. She was meant for you and you were meant for her. And then there is the thing that right now you are in a minority because you live in Florida. And so right now we are majority and you are in a minority.
Yes.
And so we can really be very abusive with you. But anyway, we think that whatever has happened to us is very good. It somehow maybe prepares us for a free Cuba. I hope so. Anyway, it prepares us for learning how to live in a country where civil rights are respected and freedom of the press is respected. I mean, we had it before. We can do it again. The thing is that this guy came and turned everything around and turned it backwards, and we had dictators because it happens. But I mean, you never learn anything if you don't go through hardship, or you don't. The only way to learn is through getting beatings and get not you know what I mean. Life is not easy.
Yeah.
And,
Well, let's share a little bit of love with you because we wanted to say a couple things that have come up in the chats. And before we run out of time, we wanted to give our viewing audience here an opportunity to ask some questions. Before we do that, I want to let everybody know this. This is a sales pitch for people to stick around and actually see the next snapshots, because we're going to cut this off in just a few minutes, but then we're going to continue a little bit with the people who have showed up live, because I want people to have a chance who are here, and we'll also record that. But we have Sylvia Santana said, I love that song. Connie said, great song. Carmen, I love all your songs. Marisela, Lily's cousin, gave me many years ago your first tape, and I've been a fan ever since. You have helped me keep mi cubanía viviendo en California y lejos de todo lo cubano. Gracias.
yeah.
That's Lourdes, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
But
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time for writing. Yeah.
And I'm going to ask everybody at this point, I put the request for people to unmute, and I'm going to open up the gallery here if anybody wants to ask a question of Marisela, and we'll make a couple brief comments, and then we'll continue our conversation after we have to formally cut the program off.
Okay.
Okay, there are people talking on the chat, and I have to always say, Jose Santana Visoso, sobrino de Lourdes, gracias, Mari, fantastic story, thanks for sharing. He's
Okay.
out in SMU in Dallas, Texas.
Wow. Okay.
And
No, I have a question. How did you end up back in Miami?
Okay. Miami is a ghetto. I call it the ghetto.
I know.
My mother was here. My family was always been here, and I left Miami when I left Miami because there wasn't any real possibility of furthering or even starting. I started in a sense in Puerto Rico because I was offered to record here by a guy that had a small recording company, and I call it the forgettable record. It's totally forgettable. I hate it. I didn't have any experience singing. I did have a lot of,
Are you going to say a bad word?
No, I wasn't. No, I had,
Oh, okay.
but I could have. I played the guitar and I had a lot of fun in parties and friends and at the beach, and we would go from high school to the beach and play all day and all that. But actually, a platform in Miami, there wasn't a platform. There was a certain platform for people that were already known in Cuba, or the platform of actors and actresses that would do some theater and all that. But like, for instance, Celia Cruz was already known, and La Lupe was already known, and all other singers. But for somebody starting out, Miami didn't have a platform. So I left with $60 and a couple of friends that I have, a couple that I met in Miami, and I used to work in Jordan Marsh, which was a store, a very fine store. And I worked there since high school. And I had met her there, and I met her husband. They had moved to Puerto Rico, and I wrote them and I said, can I go and stay with you until I find a way to be on my own? Because my parents said that I couldn't be a singer. My parents said that it was they didn't like the thing, and they wanted me to get back on college. I was doing some college, and then they said, if you don't stop this, you can't live here. And I had been sent alone when I was 11, so I said okay, and I left. I mean, hello. And I wanted to be a singer. I was already a singer because I sang in the Forgettable record. And so I went to Puerto Rico, and in Puerto Rico I started right away. I started, my first gig was in the best place in Old San Juan, which was called Ocho Puertas. And I did an audition there, and I was hired. And then I started, little by little, until finally I stayed there like two years. I recorded a a record there. I did a recording there, which was the first live recording that was ever done. The first live recording, and which was very quixotic because it didn't have. I mean, nobody really could understand that didn't have the same sound as you could protect the sound in a studio. But I did a live recording, and then I went to Spain, and I went to Spain on the same premises. No money, nobody. I didn't know anybody. Maybe I'm reincarnated from Christopher Columbus, and I never thought about it. But then he had the Queen. Anyway, I went to Spain. In Spain, I got in 2 or 3 months, I got a record contract with what is now Sony Records. So I've always had a good luck. I've always had good luck. If I am not better known in the rest of the world, it's because what I write and what I sing is not commercial. It's not la 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 da 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 da. I am not good. I don't have a good ass. So maybe I think I do, but not for people's. So anyway, I am not the typical commercial singer. Although there are other singers that are very serious and that are very good that have had the chance. But then here comes what I started saying before. If you do not have a country backing you up, this career is very difficult. It's difficult for actors, it's difficult for artists, and very difficult for singers. But it's doubly difficult if you don't have a country to back you up. So we go through that. We have to deal with that. And then at one point, even I fell in love with I love animals, and I started living in a ranch, and I kind of got sick of fighting the fact that your songs, even though I even tried to lower the quality of the songs, but not the quality, the lyrics. I wanted to write bigger lyrics, better, more poetic lyrics, and I started doing more accessible lyrics, which I still think that they are very difficult anyway. I mean, if you compare with what's out there. Out there is just like Mickey Mouse. And I tried lyrics that were maybe, in my view, more understandable. But then it was such a fight. I got tired. And for 2 or 3 years, I kept writing, I kept composing, but I got out of the public view, public life. And then I realized that this is not me, that I have to I confronted the fact that I am a singer and that I am a composer and that I enjoy being on stage. Maybe it's not a stadium. I have sung in stadiums. I have sung in how do you call it in New York? What do you call the stadium in New York?
In Madison Square Garden.
Madison Square Garden. I have sung in Madison Square Garden. I have sung here in all the stadiums. But the thing is that sometimes you just have to understand who you are and confront. And I say, I'm not happy if I don't do this. No, if it's for 100 people or if it's for 500,000 people, you have to just acknowledge who you are. And I did, and it made me really get to be in peace with my choice. And I hope I don't make people suffer. So that's what I would like. That's what I would really like. To keep doing what I do and not be desafinado.
Well, I was going to add something to what you said, that you needed a country to back you.
Yeah.
But we don't have a country, but we have a people. And I think the community itself backs you. Because I've been to your concerts and you have a large following and they're faithful. to you.
Speaking of which, Lily, let me jump in because
Okay.
we'll have to end this portion of the program. But stick around, everybody. You get the exclusive after party with Marisela Verena.
Don't go away.
Don't go away. And but at this point, we want to thank the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs Council, the Miami-Dade County Mayor, and Board of County Commissioners. And for everyone else who's in the audience, definitely please stick around. And for those of you watching the recording, don't you wish you could hear what's coming up next? Please stay in touch with
Oh, Firehouse Projects?
the Young Conservatory.
Cranberry Coast Concerts.
So now for our recorded audience, we're going to say adios and thank you for joining us.